I call to order the December 4, 2017 work session of Swarthmore Borough Council. I note that Ms. Walk and Mr. Murphy are unable to be with us tonight. All other council members are present, as is the mayor. I report that will be an executive session on a personnel matter at the end of the regular business this evening. The first order of business is to hold a public hearing on the advertised 2018 budget, which I hereby convene. Anybody who wishes to address us on the budget as publicized should please come forward, state your name and address, and give us your thoughts on that. No one wishing to address council on that matter. I will call that public hearing adjourned and closed. At this point, we welcome public comment on any matter of interest to the borough. If you wish to speak with us on any subject relevant to the borough, please come forward, state your name and address, and we'd be happy to hear from you.
Good evening, Council. Rick Lee, President of the Fire Company. Just wanted to let the community know that this weekend we began our Christmas tree sales in cooperation with Swarthmore Fire Company. We are open every Friday night, 5 to 8, Saturdays 10 to 6, and Sundays 12 to 5. We had a very, very busy weekend, and we hope to see all the residents come out and to help support both fire companies. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, the public comment period is ended. I note that the borough received a letter from the Pennsylvania Family Council, and it relates to an Act 42 having to do with the expansion of gambling opportunities in the Commonwealth, which allowed the creation of additional casino areas. But that act, among other things, enabled local municipalities to object, if they wish to the location within them of the kinds of satellite casinos that were authorized by the Act. And any municipality wishing to so object had to do so by December 31st. That legislation also, however, you may have read something about this in the papers about how it came to be politically, but prevents anybody from having a satellite casino within 21.5, within a certain distance of existing categories of casinos. And since Swarthmore Borough is within 21 miles, 4.4 miles of the casino at Valley Forge, and at Harrah's in Chester, 4.4 miles, under the terms of the Act, no satellite casino could be located in our borough anyhow. And so whether or not we wish to allow or authorize such a casino here for satellite gambling, it can't happen anyway, so there's no need for us even to consider whether that's something we wish to take advantage of under the legislation. I just thought I would report that to you, which I have done. We have, that have been presented to us for our review and comment, a proposed council meeting for 2018, a holiday schedule for 2018. These, I assume, are not for adoption tonight, but would be for adoption at our next meeting, which is not next week, but on the 18th of this month. That gap having to do with timing of budget adoption. We have in our package for review resolutions setting fees, charges, and fines for 2018, and setting salaries and benefits for 2018. Does any member have any question about any of the dates on either the schedules or of the resolutions that I've just identified? Okay. Next, we have the Environment Committee. Lauren?
Sure. I wanted to announce a meeting, and I can send an email out later, but on December 12th at 7 o'clock, Stacy McCormick of the Trust for Public Lands is going to be speaking in this room and doing a presentation on there feasibility studies that they do for communities to help them preserve land, open space. And I want to reach out to the Borough Council members who are going to start up in January too. So I think that's going to be very, very useful. Members of the Centennial Foundation have been asked to attend, and we'd like some people from SRA to be there and the public as well. So again, that is December 12th at 7 p.m. and I'll send out emails. And it's here in this room.
Okay.
Second, there will be some ordinance changes that the Environment Committee is proposing, and I understand that we needed a period for advertising. So we can't, Jane says we can't vote on it until January. Is that correct?
But we would have to act at our next meeting to...
But at our next meeting, I'm just wondering, we'll have some new members in January, and they're actually going to do the voting too, some kind of thinking out loud here. But the advertisement is everything that we want to do, and it needs to be way ahead of time, like a month
It
or
needs to
something.
be, well, because it's in a Swarthmore, which only runs once a week, it only needs to run 7 days in advance of the meeting, but because the Swarthmore is a once a week
Okay.
publication, you
Okay,
can't,
all right.
as far as thinking it a little bit further out.
So Sarah and Betsy are both on our email chain now, so
Okay.
if one of us can get out that amended
Oh,
ordinance,
that's great.
then people can talk about it next week.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 2 weeks, authorize it for advertising,
Okay.
and it can happen at the legislative session. You're right, with the new
Okay.
people. But
That's
anything that I send out now, they get. If
Okay.
they
Oh,
want to
great.
come
All
and
right.
participate,
Oh, that's
they can.
great. All right.
And when you advertise it, it doesn't have to stay exactly the same. It can make
Well, I
some
think
change.
there, yeah, I mean, there's some change that people have informally suggested to me that sound good already, but no, so we'll just talk about best ways to word it at the meeting.
But there needs to be, for our next meeting, a proposed ordinance.
Yes,
which will be advertised.
Yes.
That proposed ordinance being subject to change at the
Yes.
time of adoption.
Okay, got it. And that's all, except I do want to say that I went to this presentation on Friday about, put on by the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture about the spotted lanternfly, and it is a nasty thing that is very prevalent right now in Berks County and parts of Montgomery County, and it is coming down here. They found some in the middle of Delaware County, and it's a fly that lives off of ailanthus trees, which are also called tree of heaven, which is an invasive plant. I've never seen it. Susan, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. And they really thrive on that, but they also really can damage stone fruit trees and grapevines. And so anyway, during the coming year, we'll be through the EAC or whatever, I'm not sure, the tree committee, etc., educating the public about how to deal with that. And Katie was also there. I see you in the back, and you're writing an article for the Swarthmorean about it.
Yeah.
Yes, that's great. And that's all I have.
Will you be meeting, your committee be meeting this month?
No.
Okay. Is there any possibility that it's a predator for the emerald ash borer at the same time?
Oh, that'd be great. Oh.
Okay, Finance Committee, Michael.
Yes, so first, discussion of the 2018 budget. Hopefully everyone had a chance to review it or take a look at it. Not a lot of changes, just a couple things to highlight. This budget obviously reflects all the funding that we talked about in the last meeting, and also it flipped the, we're now, instead of having $11,000 surplus, the $27,000 is coming from the previous years, or 2017's fund balance. So that's the main part there. I think the other part that's worth highlighting, that's not in the main portion of the budget, is if you look very carefully in the additional columns at the unrestricted fund balance, which the pages aren't numbered. But as you remember, we talked about having an expected fund balance the end of this year of approximately $510,000, or about 10% of the budget, which is about high in the range of 5 to 10% of what we target. But the building permit fees have come in. They'll come in through the November financials. Is that correct? And that's over $500,000. So and the expenses related to it are less than that, and they're not coming until next year. So the fund balance is now going to be, at the end of the year, approximately $1,073,000. That's quite a significant amount. So I think, I want to bring that to everyone's attention, but I think the best way to proceed is for the Finance Committee to figure out what's the most efficient way to utilize. That could be paying down debt, it could be capital, putting it into capital funds, some combination thereof, other projects that we're not thinking of that make sense, but essentially what that means is that our fund balance is expected to be 10 is probably going to be closer to 20%. So it's a high-class problem, but I think we want everyone to be aware that that's the situation. So that's the biggest change in the papers that you're looking at as far as that. I wanted the highlights, but I'm happy to discuss any other questions as it relates to the budget or to that specific item I just mentioned.
Could folks infer reasonably from what you've just recited that whatever else may happen to that excess, that we will not be having a tax increase next year?
Correct. Yeah, that's all part of this. You're talking about, that'll be the next point here in terms of resolutions, in terms of,
right.
Yeah, the millage will stay the same. So there's going to be some rearrangement of that in terms of I'm skipping ahead here a little bit, but we're introducing a fire tax to better align the public's knowledge of what we're spending, as Ross and others discussed last meeting. But the actual total amount is not changing.
Okay.
So yes, there will be no.
Okay. Any questions or comments about the budget in the form it now exists?
The other question I have is, you mentioned the expenses that would be coming next year. We probably don't know the extent of those. We have to wait for next year.
I don't think we'll know the exact amount, but it's going to be significantly less than the amount that we've taken in. So, I think we knew that there was going to be a fairly significant amount. We didn't know the exact timing, whether it would be this year or next year in terms of the revenue from that building permit. And obviously, it's a one-time fee only, and one-time expense, but the expense is much less, obviously, given the size of the project. It's fairly unusual and fairly large. So I think my suggestion would be that the Finance Committee comes up with some suggestions and then brings that forward to the full council. Decide kind of what to do with that excess.
I guess we'll wait to the end because I'm curious as what you were saying.
No, we will wait till the end of the report. Okay. So do you want to
say something, Ken? I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I did make an adjustment in building, there's an expense item for the building inspector, but not knowing exactly what was going to happen with inspection, I didn't increase it a lot, but obviously there's enough fund balance that should the expenses be greatly more than anticipated in this budget, there'll be sufficient revenue to pay for it.
Okay.
Okay, so any other questions as it relates to the budget? No? Okay. So the next, as we already just talked about, is the authorization to advertise the 2018 tax and fee ordinance that I think is listed under, what's the number it's listed?
It would be
1079. Yeah, so ordinance 1079. So do I have to make a motion to advertise?
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Cregan seconds. All those in favor of advertising, say aye.
Aye.
Chair opposed, chair votes aye. Authorization is given.
Okay. Any questions as it relates to that? No? Okay. And then, so a couple of other things. The other part would be the resolutions for the borough tax collector and to collect the sanitary sewer fees. I don't know if there's any questions as it relates to those.
There are 4 proposed resolutions.
Yeah.
They're listed. Does anybody have any question about any of the 4? Which are authorization for borough tax collector to collect the sanitary sewer fee, uniforms and police contribution to pension funds, cost of living adjustments for borough pensioners, and appointment of the independent auditor.
I think, can I make just one quick comment?
Can you make I didn't mean to steal your stuff.
No, I'm glad you did, because it was quite a mouthful. I'd like to point out the cost of living adjustment for borough pensioners. We looked at basically the last 10 years, and sometimes we've given it, sometimes we haven't. And based on the consensus of the pension committee, we decided not to grant that for this year, so there's no increase.
How many people are
In the pension plans?
there?
Who are actually getting checks?
Yeah.
It's a good question. It's not that many.
I'm going to say maybe 6 non-uniform,
Okay.
5 police.
Okay.
The police pensions are capped by state law. They can't contribute, they can't ever earn more than 130% of what they retired on. And most of our officers are in that category. But of course, we have 2 new officers now, and Klein is a pensioner, and Joe McGinnis.
Okay, thank you. Any question about any of the other resolutions that are listed on the agenda that I reviewed? Okay, hearing none. Will your committee will be meeting this month?
No.
Okay, okay, so you thought that at some point the committee was going to do something. Will that happen before year end, or will that be next year?
Well, I guess the question will be that we're not sure if the cost will, when will we actually incur the cost as it
Well,
relates
it
to
is sort of ongoing. We'll have a pretty good idea. If you've been up to the college, you can see.
Okay,
it's
well,
just-
so-
Yeah, so I think it's going to be more of a rolling process.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, right, so.
just so we have a more specific number.
Right, and that number will not be in this year, but will be next year, really, right? Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
so you do not plan to meet?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
There's nothing imminent that we.
Oh, okay, thank you. Because there's a gap between our meetings, and certain people need to be paid or will be done if they don't get paid, we have accelerated the bill list to this meeting, which was distributed at 6 o'clock. And so I want to I don't know, have you all looked at the bill list? Anybody need more time now to look at the bill list? Is there a motion to authorize payments of the items on that list as distributed today? Lauren moves. Mr. Schmeichel seconds. Any discussion about any of the items on that list? Hearing all those in favor of authorizing payment of those items, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. Payment is approved. Thank you. General government.
We did not have a meeting this past month. We will have a brief meeting this month on December 18 at 7:30 p.m., our normal time,
Okay.
and that's all.
Okay. Do you now know what the likely subjects of discussion of that meeting will be?
I do,
Okay. Would you like to share that?
approving our minutes.
Isn't that the same time as the borough council meeting?
Oh, yes, we're going to do it at that meeting.
Yeah,
We're going to do it during the
Oh,
meeting.
okay. Nice.
yeah.
It'll be a twofer.
We should have all the meetings.
Okay.
There'll be a motion, and there'll be yes.
Right.
It'll be done.
So that had been the subject of an email exchange before
Yes.
today. Thank you. So, planning and zoning. Now, is anybody from Ms. Walk, in case anyone is interested, is in State College at this moment on a course that is made available by somebody there for new registers of will and or register of wills, registers of wills.
Registers of will.
And so, yes, so, is anybody else prepared to do any report on behalf of the Planning and Zoning Committee? We saw a report in the Swarthmorian about action taken by the Zoning Hearing Board with respect to the dispute that existed on Riverview Road, but we'll have to wait for 2 weeks from now till Mary presumably will be with us and can give us a report for that committee. Public safety.
Right, we will not be meeting this month. Just 2 items on the agenda. One, we received a report from Police Chief Brian Craig concerning Part 1 crime comparisons for 2016. 2017 hasn't been completed yet, so we don't know. So these are comparative statistics comparing Swarthmore to neighboring communities, both in terms of violent crimes per 1,000 population and property crimes per 1,000 population. And I'm happy to report that for 2016, Swarthmore Borough was again at the bottom of both of those categories. In other words, had fewer violent crimes and fewer property crimes. The other item on the agenda is the review of the annual contract with Brandywine Veterinary Hospital. You know, they're that hospital where strays that are taken in by the borough are lodged and cared for. I think you probably had a chance to at least look at the contract. It's not substantially different from what we had the previous year, so this is really essentially a renewal on the same terms.
If people want to adopt that tonight, they can. I mean,
Oh,
it's
that
an
can be-
advertised, yeah, it's an advertised meeting. It might be one fewer thing to do
Okay.
next week.
All right,
Plus
so,
I have the 2 copies for David to sign if you want to.
well, that being the case then, I'm going to go ahead and move that council approve or adopt the memorandum of understanding between the borough and Brandywine Vet Hospital.
Is there a second?
Second.
Carrie seconds. Any discussion or question? All those in favor of approving the memorandum of understanding as embodied in this document, which is substantially the same as previous, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. It's approved.
And that's all I have, David.
Okay. On the agenda, there is Michigan Avenue sanitary sewer repairs. Mr. Murphy is not with us. Jane, can you share that with us?
Yeah.
What he would say if you
Yeah,
were here?
if you were here, we did receive, I think, 4 or 5 bids for the sanitary sewer job you authorized going out for bids months ago. One bid came in substantially lower than the others. Upon further review, the engineer does not feel that that is a valid bid, so he actually wanted me to ask the solicitor whether they need to go back out to bid or whether they can take the
I
second.
can go for the second if he feels it's a defendable position to throw
Okay,
out.
and the company doesn't want to do it for the price
They've
they.
acknowledged that there was
Yes,
some.
there was a
Okay,
mistake
yeah,
in whatever
okay.
it was.
All right.
The quoted low bid was about a third of what the engineer thought the cost would be. So right away, we thought there was an issue. So I'll talk to David about that a little bit more then, and we'll distribute those bid results, revised, and the engineer's recommendation for award for the next meeting.
Okay. I remember once when I was on the school board that there was a bid for the painting, all the exterior woodwork of what at the time was called the Rutgers Avenue School, and the bids were open at the meeting, and there was some bid that was materially below all the rest. And the then business director, we adjourned, and he left the meeting and called Pritchard and said, "Did you really mean to bid this?" And Mr. Pritchard said, "Oh my God, no." So we proceeded. Okay, thank you. Anybody else who's on the Public Works Committee wish to make any report on the activities of that committee tonight? Okay. Nope. Okay, then the mayor.
Thank you, David. I wanted to tell council that Stu Hain, who is the vice president for facilities at the college, is retiring. And it was a very nice event that they had for him last week.
I already intended to go to that, and somehow it got totally busted. I know I feel badly about that.
It's not normal for me to talk about people retiring at the college, but Stu had a particularly important role to play with town relations and did it exceedingly well. And I think everybody in the borough had dealings with him. I think Jim can agree with this. He was a straight shooter and didn't sugarcoat anything and did things really well, but in an empathetic way. So he'll be missed. Not sure they're going to replace it with 4 different people, but it's. The other thing I wanted to mention was that I think we had a pretty fantastic home for the holidays this past Saturday. Carriage rides all sold out. I think the fire department sold a lot of trees. There were, I think there were about 250 people on the platform waiting for the Santa Claus to come off the train. the Janine's Asiande's Kwanzaa celebration in the inn was pretty amazing. And I think having all those third graders learn about African dance made it even better because there was an awful lot of dancing going on. And the fact that we had Santa Claus led on a fire truck from the train station down into town, led by African drummers, was, I think, something that only could kind of happen in Swarthmore. And it was a good thing. No serious injuries at the ukulele sing-along. And I think just a shout out to Pat Francher and to Anita for the incredible work that they did putting it all together and making it all work. It was a great day to be in town.
Very impressive. And we thank them for all that work. And we thank all those people who wrapped the burlap around all of the light posts. There's a question that was raised in the Grove House as to why the wrapping was brown and not red, but does it?
Because Anita said so.
Hard to get
Defend
rid
your
of.
decision, yeah. But there are also bright blue banners.
Oh, no, it's.
With snowflakes to go with them.
Very impressive, very
Also-
impressive. Okay, now, should we reverse on the agenda the public comment and then the borough manager?
Sure.
Because usually public comment comes again after the solicitor would have spoken, true?
I don't usually change this order, so I don't think so.
I
Really?
don't recall.
Yeah, I think it usually goes this way.
Well, why don't we do it the way I just said?
Okay, so you want me to go next?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll go next. On the agenda under me is an addendum that I sent out to folks. Our health insurance is through the Delaware Valley Health Trust. They buy into the Aetna network, I guess soon to be the CVS network, I'm not quite sure. And we do have a trust agreement that we've had with them for the well over 10 years we've been with them. We have an agreement to sign. We are entering into a high deductible health plan. The borough is funding, actually this is in the resolution that you saw today, and the borough is funding the health savings account. And in order to do that and reap the significant benefits that the borough is getting on premium costs, they do ask us to guarantee that we will stay in the trust for at least another 3 years. I personally hope that we never have reason to leave the trust. But I think it's a good deal, at least for the next 3 years, so I would encourage.
And that will be acted on at our next meeting?
That would be tonight.
Oh.
I'd like to get this done before the end of this calendar year, so
Okay.
all things being equal, I'd like to get that one done.
Is there a motion to that effect? So moved. Second?
Second.
Second by Lauren. Any discussion or question for Jane about it? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, opposed. It's approved.
And the only other thing I had is I put in the, when I sent out the agenda, I did something I've never done before, which is I put forth, well, I didn't do the ordinance. The ordinance was put forth for the soliciting and whatever that you passed last month, except we had never advertised it. So I assume by passing it, that was advertising authorization, so it has now been duly advertised, and it will be on the agenda again for adoption on the 18th.
Then which is that?
The peddling, soliciting,
Oh, okay. Thanks.
hawking, wares ordinance.
Bob?
I say do not have anything.
Okay. Any public comment at this time? And I now see, thinking back over 8 years, that it is where it has always been. I
Sorry.
apologize for that.
Yes, and then I did have the request for an executive session.
Okay, and so we will now adjourn into executive session. Thank you all for coming tonight, the thousands of you who have come out tonight for this purpose.